Okay, good morning, good morning. So again, good. I learned a little bit yesterday about lions, eagles, and elephants, and also the rivers. At least I got the animals memorized. I don't have the rivers memorized yet, but I got time to work on that. So, as you know, I'm from the U.S. Here, looking forward to working with you all this week. I'm supposed to say a little bit about myself. I am I'm a sociologist. You might say, what has to do with leadership? And some of the things that probably, everybody wants to be a sociologist. I'm pretty sure of that, right? Right. But I came to sociology through a long route. I'm a former engineer, an electrical engineer. I worked with satellites, producing those, and also computer chips, your smart devices and the like. I did that for a number of years. Then I got kind of bored with that. And I left that, and I actually did pretty good with it also. Became on the automation side, an automation engineer. What we do is that we find ways to reduce the work performance, which knows what I'm saying, 25 jobs, in kind of a nice way. But, and I got real good at that. I got a lot of big bonuses from going into, I got it so bad, I had it so bad that whenever I go into any kind of workplace, we have McDonald's here, right? Yeah. Well, fast food joint to a public office, really doesn't matter that whenever I go into the workplace, I automatically start thinking about ways to reduce the amount of labor that's involved in it. That's the kind of engineering work that I did. And I became interested more so in what are sort of like some of the broader positive impacts that technology can have on society, particularly like development in Africa. So I left engineering and started studying sociology and African development, particularly in the southern region, and started going to southern Africa, I don't know, back in 88, 89, about maybe 60 trips ago. Particularly South Africa, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. Um, so I started working on ICT development, information and communication technologies, and how to close the digital divide. Um, Working in the area of cellular, working with the UN's Economic Commission for Africa, policy issues related to that in the southern region. And then more recently, working on renewable energy, particularly solar. So I spent some time being a broker between solar companies in the U.S. and in Southern Africa nations as well. So despite the fact that I'm a sociologist, you might say, what is that anyway? I still managed to work with my technology background and my management and even more so leadership interests in particular areas that I'll get into more later. But anyway, so that's sort of a 30,000 foot view of Rubin Patterson, and we get a close-up view if you want that a little bit later. Thanks.
All right, so let's welcome Dr. Yali to the session. Please put your hands together. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Okay, I'll only give a little brief introduction to myself. My name's Dr. Jemima Jare. You might also be seeing me called Mulu. Mulu is my married name. So I'm the same person, it's not too different from that. I'm Ghanaian. I was born and raised in Manchester, United Kingdom. So anybody that supports Manchester United is automatically in my good books. Hence my very Okay, so I studied in the UK all my life, and then I came to Ghana about 6 years ago. I live with my parents in the UK, and I'm a full-time member of faculty at Gimba. I teach leadership, business ethics, and I also teach international relations and politics in the School of Government. Okay? So my mission here is to make you think. Yes. So this whole week we're going to be looking at ethics and corruption. Yeah. And many of us, these kind of words are part of our daily parlance. Yeah. This place is so corrupt. Everywhere corruption. Here, there, everywhere. But what do we mean when we say everywhere is corruption is everywhere? What do we mean when we talk about ethics, the moral fabric of our society? And these are the issues that we're going to explore throughout these next 5 days. So we need to think, when we're talking about corruption, what do we mean? Does it mean that when we go before the judge in the courts, that we don't get justice? Does it mean that when we go to the bank and we need to get our money out, that we're unable to do so? Does it mean that when I apply for a school, I gained the right qualifications to get in, that for some apparent reason I'm denied access? What does corruption mean in our daily lives? So, what does corruption mean to you? Can I have any feedback on that? What does it mean? What is it? Lady at the back. Lady here. Yes. Is there another mic? Do you have another mic? Okay.
Okay, I'm qualified Carolina Sulaway. When we talk about corruption, we talk about the abuse of power for personal or sexual benefits. And when it comes to power, we talk about political power, social power, and economic power, and I can say power. Yeah. And when it comes to sectional benefits, wherein this person will have to lose their power to gain benefits for themselves. For instance, if I happen to go in the market and then I found out that this goes, the government price is like for $50, and then I happen to go in the market and then I found it 25 and more than $50 just for that person to get their own benefits. So that would, in that case, that person is getting their own personal benefits. That's the abuse of power. Thank you.
Do we have any more? Want more feedback on that? Sorry. Lady in the yellow.
My name is Toloba, and I think that corruption is basically the lack of integrity and the use of power dishonestly.
Use of power. I don't want the term power. Use of power for dishonesty. Do we have any more?
My name is Daniel Maxwell from Nigeria. And when I hear corruption, I think of lies. I think of people taking advantage of others through whatever means possible. So just by taking advantage of the next person, if you have to cut in the queue, you've been corrupt. If you have to not return the proper amount of change, you've been corrupt. If you have to uh, claim more tuition fees from your parents than you're paying, you're being corrupt. So those basic things that we sometimes take for granted, in my opinion, that's where corruption all begins, and that's what comes to mind as corruption.
Okay. One more activity and then we'll
Alright, my name is Gokudo Salado, the second from Nigeria. When we talk corruption, what comes to mind is the willful manipulation of power to, how you call it, the favor of oneself.
it's totally connected. So you realize that with just the few inputs that we have here, corruption can work on many different levels. Yeah? Many times when we're talking about corruption, we think of grand scale, yeah? Major malfeasance or major embezzlement, yes? Usually done by external people such as many politicians, etc. Yeah? I really like your input, where corruption, yes, is not just something that is done at a higher level or on a grand scale. Our lifestyles can be corrupt. Yes? The examples that were given, I remember last Yali session, we had a speaker come in and challenged the Yali participants that if you're a male or a female and you have more than one partner, you all say that, corruption is crime is everywhere. And if you don't like it, and you have more than one partner, and you don't like corruption, and you don't like your own lifestyle, yeah? Because in order to have more than one partner, what do you have to do? You have to cheat. You have to use, not necessarily, well, many times.
Culturally, there's the cultures where polygamy is
That one relationship. Marriage is different.
More than one partner, yeah? I never have to lie to them about the other one. Then you can argue along those lines. Then you can. However, in theory you can. In practice, it is almost not impossible. So really, yeah? And we're talking about practice. So what I'm saying is that when we're looking at these issues, when we're talking about ethics, we're talking about corruption, don't just think of it on the grand scale. Break it down into its component parts. Yes? Don't think of it as something external that's out there. Yes? Examine yourself, your own practices. Yes? Before you go out and make it this external thing that we need to fight against. Okay? So throughout this week there will be a kind of journey. Initially we start off with ethical leadership. That's what we're going to do today. And we'll be looking at what constitutes ethical leadership. What is an ethical leader? Yes. One of the reasons what we're talking about, why is it important? Because many of you might ask that, what's the whole deal about? Many of my students do. So that's why that really is important. It's key. And if you want any kind of transformation in society, you need leaders that have values, have principles, and act on them. Okay? So we're looking at ethical leadership today. And then we're going to look at corruption culture. Corruption culture is always very, very interesting because it not only it examines our core values and our beliefs and how these may or may not facilitate or even propagate corruption. Yes, we will look at Tuesday at 12. I'm going to guest speaker that's going to communicate about institutional corruption. And after that, the following day, we're going to look at whether or not women are fair sex when it comes to corruption. There's something ingrained in women that makes them less corrupt. And look at some of the issues around women. Yeah. And then I think the following day on the Thursday, we're going to look at the whole issue of social responsibility and creating shared value. And on the final day, on Friday, you will be presenting a poster that we will develop throughout the course, looking at all the issues that we're talking about and how we can devise ways of strategizing and curbing corruption and promoting a more ethical society through all the things we've learned about the week. So I'm just giving you a kind of outline of what's going to be happening within the next 5 days of work. There'll be plenty of discussion, plenty of debate, maybe some disagreement, yeah. But the most important thing is that we come willing to share and willing to learn. So I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Dr.
Okay, thank you for that. So the slides are coming up now, and we don't have a blue one, we don't have blue slides. Since I'm older and I have a senior moment to get what I'm talking about, I can always look here and get it. It's always something just to keep me busy as well, something to look at rather than look at me, so I'm not so telegenic. So it's not much up there as such. I'm going to talk through the key points here. I don't know if you can see the characters. Is it okay? No. It's not. Small. So our friends up front can see it, but not those. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Our friends up front can see it, but not necessarily in the back. But those in the back, again, no worries. I'll talk you through it. We just chimed in about the idea about the corruption. I'll talk about corruption later. As early as tomorrow as well. But I think it kind of concerns me a little bit though, is that if we take the queue jumping as corruption, then how do we need another language as in another vocabulary for that which is much bigger? In other words, we have grand corruption. But if we're going to use the word corruption for somebody jaywalking or something like that, and you see what I'm saying? It kind of undermines the gravity of the situation that we're trying to project what the bigger corruption that's really undermining overall society. Not to say that queue jumping and turning on and running the, what do you call it, the robots, the red lights or traffic lights, running the traffic light, is a form of corruption. It's just a different thing. We want to try to unpack that some and think more deeply about that as well. It seems to me it might be a worthwhile exercise. And yeah, so we are again. So we're going to try to challenge you. You should try to challenge me. One thing I like about teaching at Howard has a lot of bold students. They get in your face, intellectually, as it is, and really challenge you. So and that's why I enjoy working with those small groups of students there. And when I work with some Yali fellows, for instance, at Howard in DC over the summer, that's what I found over and over and over again. They were very impressed. So an opportunity came up to get a chance to come over and address intellectuals like yourselves, aspiring leaders, people going to transform the continent. So I jumped at the opportunity to do that. We're just going to want to get a lot of things here, maybe not. So today we're going to be talking more around the psychology. So we're thinking about talking about psychology, talking about the individual, how individuals think. And most of what we're going to be talking about though is from the social side. Because even how we think as individuals is very much so reflective or sort of like socially produced. You know, if you were born and and raised in suburban, Miami, Florida, in some posh neighborhood, you'll probably think you're a totally different person. Somebody over there from the east side of Detroit, which is very, very impoverished and very crime-ridden and alike, and raised over here, he or she would be very, very different. So that's why I don't get so much into the psychology or too deep into that, but it's very much so it's important. I want to give it this due today as it relates to ethics, but we're going to spend much more time thinking about the broader side, about how society is actually shaped, individual psychology. Now on the first slide, how do we go back to the first slide? Let's see, so we can figure this out. Okay. So we're going to start out talking about leadership and management. And this kind of frustrating because I'm used to gesturing a lot. And I want to splatter my hand across the room. So yeah, so leadership and management. So you know the difference between those, right? They're related, supported, but quite different nonetheless. So who knows what the difference is? I can't very go up. I see it.
Well, let's define leadership about doing management leadership is about doing the right things, and management is about doing things right. That's how I feel it. So finding out what to do versus the technical aspect of actually doing it.
Okay, there's our librarian friend. We have another friend here who wants to weigh in.
I think leadership is starting a path for the manager to actually do the everyday work. So management is more like an operational thing, but the leader sets the path, charts the path, and then leads other people to work in that path.
Okay, thanks. Yes, sir.
Why management talks about result? Management basically kind of why leadership is more efficiency, the process leading to the output. So it's more about the people, it's not about the destination.
Okay, so relax, just another.
Management is ability to manage people. Right? Leadership is ability to serve.
Okay. A lot of people want to weigh in around this. So you pick three boards. What are you going to do?
Now, remember that with leadership, they have followers. With management, they have people who work for them.
Yes.
Leadership is more or less concerned with long-term sustainability.
Okay, one more. One more.
Good morning. My name is Selassie Ghana. I see leadership as influencing people. See leadership as influencing people, and management as coordinating and organizing people.
Yeah, so I'm curious about, I want to see a show of hands. How many interested in, I want to ask, how many hands for the management? How many of those want to be really in leadership? First, management. How many people want to be in management? Okay.
How many people want to be?
About 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, keep going. 12, 13. How many people want to be in leadership? Okay, so if you're so decisive, if 85% of you generally want one thing, and only a small minority wants the other one, you must have some working idea as to what the difference is between these two, right? And so I heard some of that, but I think about it like right here, that leadership really is about change. It's about, again, as kind of gave the away here with disruption. Whereas management is about continuity. Management is about how do we do things smoothly and efficiently and effectively, as I heard some of you say. What are the best protocols to follow in various functional aspects of some organization, to meet the clearly defined, goals that we've been after for some time. Whereas leadership is about overturning the apple cart and going in a totally different direction. You need both, and oftentimes the person who might do a backup job or will do a very good job in one, not so good in the other one. I'm pretty good at the leadership side, like the whole thing about the technology design and transforming how people go to work, how many people go to work. That can kind of revolutionize the workforce. So I just always have liked disruption. But again, I know you have to have the smooth functioning also. I mean, for instance, when I was flying here from Washington, D.C., I wanted the domestic and the international flight control systems to be managed well. I don't want any disruption. I wanted the manager who's supposed to know who's supposed to be at work, who's taking care of the radar system, who's got the backup generators working, everybody's going to be doing regular things, regular functions, routine functions. So I think that it is important. I think some of the disruption came from me is that my parents, doing back in the States with the civil rights movement and Black Power movement. My parents were very much involved in that. And they took my sisters and me and little toddlers in the midst of all of those bombings and all that stuff as kids. And so it's like really sort of deeply embedded in my DNA around change, pushing for change for improvement. It's going to make some people uncomfortable, but in the end, it's for a bigger goal and bring about more happiness and all that kind of stuff. So that's the difference. Now, when I hear yes, sir.
Sorry, I understand that leadership is about change and disruption.
Right.
The question for me is it always about change? Because there may be times where change is necessary and innovation is good and disruption is perfect, but there are times where that's not necessarily the case, and it's about just getting a group of people, a constant group of people, to a particular destination. So when you say leadership is about disruption, the question is it always about disruption?
Yeah, excellent question there. So what we find though is that it's not as though a leader might put himself or herself out of business, but the skill sets that he or she would have when at a certain plateau, because it might be the case. What if you finish up and you with some, I don't know where you would go, some NGO or do your own social enterprise, social entrepreneurship enterprise, some think tank or whatever the case might be. Let's say if you go there, like McKinsey Global Institute or something, I don't know. Let's say if you actually got all these big ideas about disruption, But your manager say like, oh, you don't understand, Thomas, all we need you to do is come in to this office and do these things, these particular ways, right? And it seems like, and it seems because we have the kind of, we're on a trajectory that, for what we want. We got the growing market share that we're after already. We're on that course. We got this new product line that's doing quite well. In other words, we don't need any disruption right now. That's going to be difficult for some people to survive in that environment. That's why some people actually, you get some leaders, they would actually leave an enterprise when there is no opportunity for disruption. And that's what I would do. I wouldn't stay. I don't have an interest in just the whole management thing, although again, I know it's important, like I gave you an example earlier. And it's a set of skills that I don't necessarily have. That's what the whole thing about knowing your strengths and weaknesses and knowing your passion is, coming to grips with that and then being comfortable with that and then putting yourself in certain spaces so you can actually succeed and benefit others. Yes, sir.
I'm a bit confused, and it's in relation to this question. When you say leadership is disruption,
Right.
I stand to be characterized by a little understanding. I was told that or taught that leaders develop and managers maintain. So if leadership will be developing for an entity and then invite managers to maintain, how does similar leadership that develop, see a long-term plan, can be disrupted or self-led?
What's this right here too, is that, but I think you actually, at Yali, you have a whole session on leadership proper, right? It's true. And so the good thing about, well, not a good thing or bad thing, but it's a thing nonetheless. And that thing being that, probably don't want to get too much overly invested in your legal definition, right? I'm thinking you can think of some leaders, technology leaders, for instance, who are immensely successful in what they do, and will give vastly different definitions of what leadership is. So I don't want to get overly invested in a precise, well-defined definition of leadership or management.
Yeah, please, just a minute. I know with the background in technology, so how do we place Steve Jobs from our part? How do we place it? Was he a leader or was he a manager? Because at one point in time, he had to lead.
Yeah, his skill sets primarily is that of leadership. That's what Steve Jobs does. Someone can get out here.
Okay, thank you. Just to probably answer the question
Right.
of the portraits.
Right.
When you asked about Steve Jobs, I think the appropriate thing to say is leaders create, at every point, first of all, leaders create the path. They create the direction for the team to work on, to move on, while the managers help the team to get another path. Now, for someone like Steve Jobs, you might not have patience for a day-to-day interaction with the team. You understand? So basically, what the someone like Steve Jobs does is, just like what he was asking, leadership is basically about disruption. You disrupt at every point because, for example, I'm coming up with a new iPhone. There are always things you need to do every time. So leadership creates that disruption for managers to have work to do. So the moment you can't disrupt again, the managers have nothing to work on. So at every point in time, leaders will have to disrupt. So that's why you have new iPhones every year, you have new laptops every year. And also, even in government have to create policies. So at every road bump, leaders have to find ways by which they can create new direction, which is disrupting what is existing at the moment for managers to have work to do and create a system.
Okay. So, my concern here is that we do not categorize leadership just as technology based or coming from a technological innovation place. And when you keep stressing disruption and citing technological examples, we or at least I tend to think that we're just looking at it from that school of thought, and let's look at let's look at movements that began. I'm tempted to cite
a religious movement, There may be disruptive parts in terms of the approach in which it goes, but the broader perspective, the overall idea of leadership is getting to a particular goal. And I'm concerned that when we say leadership is about disruption, that's is it always? And I'm glad you came back by saying we shouldn't get caught up on one way to define it, and that kind of answered the question. But I don't want to believe that leadership is only or always about disruption. That's my point.
So let's say this, we're just going to kind of bring it back also. We got some ground to kind of cover too. But I appreciate the fact that the juices are flowing. One of the worst things I can ever imagine addressing a group is that the monologue. One person talking and boring the rest of the people to tears. Again, quick to get out. I don't think that's going to be the case here, which is a good thing. Given the nature of the topic, and also given the fact that so many bright and spirited people are here. But also, I got a lot of other examples also. I just gave, the same about technology because, again, that's where I came from. I also gave an example about, from political disruption, about, civil rights movement and Black Power movement, around giving people the right, having people to earn their, fight for their right to vote and be somebody in society, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing technological about that. And again, there are other examples that are coming in as well. So let's go to 15 minutes into it. Your brothers some time over here. Here.
Thank you very much. My name is David. I think the word distraction, some of us are trying to only look at the negative part of its meaning.
Yeah.
But just like the word development. Many times we use the word development only to mean good things, forward movement, but development can also mean bad development. For example, if you talk about technology and you say, oh, there's this new development or this new technology, to some people who are anti-GMO see the GMO technology as something backward. So to me, coming back to the word distraction, it's about saying that, hey, let's pause and look at where we're going. So maybe the leader has given the manager the chance to do what he's trying to do. But at the point in time, when it comes to look at what you're doing, you realize that you are going the wrong path. So he stops you, and that can be tend to be distraction. So to me, it's all about getting the meaning of the word right. So distraction is not, in here, it's not about negativity. It's about taking a pause and looking at where to go directly, rightly. That's what I think about distraction.
Very good. So I'm going to just move on. I like good balance. Let's get a couple of details in as well.
For me, I think one of the positive words for that leadership should be developed. Leadership is about development, and then management is about maintenance.
Okay, very good. And here, and I'm going to jump to another area.
Nigeria. So I think I'm trying to understand. You asked the question earlier, who are managers, who wants to be managers, and who wants to be leaders. But initially, I felt that the leader could also be a manager. So I want to get to understand that I was going to pick somebody and say this is the leader and this is a manager, just mixed like that. But are you actually mix both of them together?
Yeah, so the going to say that, okay, still on. Okay. So the thing is, though, there are some individuals who are, and I'm in awe of them. I'm jealous of them, but they are actually both. They're very good leaders and good managers, but they're really quite rare, as I found, in different types of industry and working in the public sector and the nonprofit sector. You don't really, get those who actually can do both quite so well. A lot of people who are very good managers who might be so risk adverse, and so they don't do that. So in my office at the university, when I got there, when I accepted the position, I said, okay, look, the department, there was no with all due respect and all, is not very, have a high profile. And that's got to change. So we have to do things very, very different. If I'm going to be there, we're going to raise our profile, we're going to raise our standards, we're going to increase our productivity. We're going to do things, dramatically different. I don't have to come, but if I come, know what you're getting, you know? So they bought into that, that's what they wanted to change. So I'm in the midst of that, because that's what I do. But at the same time, when you're at a university and a department or a college, you got students who are just coming in and who are got to be enrolled in classes, got to get a curriculum together. You got some routine things to do also. Those are things that bore me to tears, right? But that's really very, very important. So I appointed an associate, and that's what she does. She's not a risk averse, kind of person, but she has a skill set that I don't have, and the passion, and and vice versa. So it works, beautifully. Is what I would say. But there are some individuals who actually have both. But again, I found it to be rather rare. But again, but why do you think it is then? Let's say, just even for the sake of argument, that leadership is about disruption and change. But you might say, okay, look, I read something in a Harvard Business Review, and they say a different thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. You may have to do the case. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that leadership is about disruptive change. Why is it that most people think about it, think they want to be leaders? I want to be a leader. You know, say, I want to be a manager. Now, what I hear from my African friends in all walks of life, all over the continent, is that they say, look, you know what, Ruben, I feel as though we have really good strategic plans in various ministries. That's not the problem. The big problem is implementation and management of those plans, those ideas. So, but everybody wants to be the leader though. Everybody say, okay, I want to be the excellent manager who actually going to make the trains run on time. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that leadership is supposed to be so sexy and all that appeal, but not management? Yes.
Well, I think the word leadership comes with the word fame. Once you are a leader, you are famous, you are known, and you tend to stand out there. But managers kind of are those behind the scenes making the things work. You may not be in the front, but you are the person making things work and maintaining it. So leadership is kind of more exciting, and management tends to be more exhaustive. You kind of spend a lot of time and energy getting the job done. So naturally, leadership would come as the best thing to go for.
Okay. And here,
Okay, thank you. I think for me, why that is easy is because management is more detailed, management is more elaborate than leadership. Leadership only provides a direction. Management needs to pull all the resources together to create a team. A leadership might not entirely be a very good team member. He might just probably be somebody that gives probably more of a bossy kind of person. So a manager has to pull all the resources available together, the human resources, the production factors, every other thing. Has to put every other thing together to achieve what the leader wants. So naturally I would probably say you might not be entirely right, but then I think management is more difficult than leadership.
good. Yes, your neighbor right there.
In my opinion, I think that a manager has to work with the team and cannot think independently because he has a team of people that he has to consider every point in time and he has to work together with them. But the leader can be irrational sometimes. You make decisions and something can just come in and sometimes it's illogical. But the manager has to consider everybody and deliver a very good job.
Very good. There's two more, because I'm just, these two right here, this one and her, and we gotta get more into it.
I think one of the things that's kept us behind as a continent is that of lack of so much concentration on the issue of management. And then there's so much concentration on leadership. So you have a lot of leaders come up, and then, for instance, somebody comes up and says, I have my own policies that I want to push, I have my own programs. then it takes less cognizance of what policies and programs that's been in place before. And then when he's done also with his own time, another person comes up with another, set of policies and programs. So as a continent, we kind of don't have certain programs, development agenda that runs regardless of who is in power, regardless of who comes to the office. So I think this is something that's common with a number of African countries.
I believe that leadership is to your question. Leadership is something to me that's challenging in a way. I put it as something, let's say in research, for instance. The researcher always wants to find new things. Management to me is more like conservative, trying to make sure that this is what I have, it should last till this or this time, and I should work within this particular budget. And that's why then the leader goes all out, then he find more to this. And that's what makes it more like a challenge to
Yeah. So this is the thing now, so this is why I spent some time with this, and my plan was not to spend this much time, that's not. Was this idea, the fact that, that leadership is about rule breaking. That's really the point I was kind of wading into. And looking into the ethics behind, the morality behind rule breaking. And so, and if you're going to be a leader, even like a villains can be leaders, like Hitler, in terms of talking about followers, right? He had a lot of followers. So villains can have leaders, but also heroes and heroines can be leaders as well. So, but one thing that's common about them though is that their willingness to break rules the idea about leaders. And so we have to understand sort of like the moral psychology of leadership, or by that we're talking about the human what I'm trying to say, human conduct in the context of leadership, of how individuals reason and justify their rubric. That's what we're trying to get to. And just for the record, though, is that so now, so some of the reasons as to why of how these individuals go about their rubric. Some of it might be this moral relativism. You know what that is, right? There's morality. But more basic, the difference between morality and ethics. A lot of times people use the word interchangeably, right? But just broadly, without getting back into subject to another debate in terms of a specific definition. But you might think in terms of like morality is like internal notions of right and wrong, which is externally induced, by the way, but by which individuals live by and make decisions in terms of something that's right and wrong. So you go down to what are the banks here? The name of the bank? Ecobank. You go to Ecobank. You don't just put your hand in the till. You don't do it just because the security guard is there or the camera is there. You say, look, I know this is not right internally. So it's not right. So therefore, I'm not going to do that. Whereas ethics have to do with like with a specific, codified codes of behavior for people of a certain domain or career or I'm trying to say a certain profession, let's say. All right. So that. But the moral relativism, the thing is that it depends on it's not something that's universal. That's this thing also around like when it comes to like democracy. You know, a lot of heads of state will say, whoa, wait a minute, that's a Western enterprise. That's not universal. We here in Africa, or we here in Latin America, or we here in Asia, we don't believe in democracy. Our people want one party, and they want us in power, and that's what we want, right? They say it's not something that's that's universal. And that was a big debate for sort of in the 90s anyway. So we kind of come out on the other end of that. People want to be able to choose their leaders, and they want to be able to hold them accountable. So that seems pretty pretty universal. Give everybody a chance to get into that leadership position, to appoint their hard-nosed managers, to make the ministries function, well. And if you give that opportunity, you squander it, then we got to take you out, put somebody else in who can actually do a better job. So that's going to be pretty, sort of universal. But more relativism, we can have like two sources, as sort of suggested here. It could be like personal nature, personally driven, or it could be sort of like socially driven. In the sense that, let's say, a person could be, you can have a person who be individually deprived morally, get no moral training whatsoever, and therefore from a kid onward, you see, two kids together, know one another, and one of them just goes and just smacks the other one, and then one of the parent of the kid who's so aggressive says nothing to the kid, other than like, why don't hit it once? Why don't hit it again? I mean, there's some people raise kids that way. And imagine that from the toddler on all the way up to adulthood, they've got no, qualms about breaking rules, for those reasons. So it can be that, but it can also be, just an overall culture that's caught in a moment, let's say, of a drift in a crisis, where someone's kind of lost the jungle in that particular kind of time, for the moment. And people can be reared in that environment, from childhood onward, and it can shape their, them for the rest of their lives, psychologically, certainly intellectually and biologically as well, because in terms of what they did get in terms of nutrients. But then they sort of handicap, for the rest of their lives. Now, which one do you think is worse? The personal relativism or the social relativism? In terms of being more consequential and being more sort of permanent, if you will. It's being worse. Why so?
Because the Lord social means that a group of people actually believe. There's something about the bandwagon effect. Right. And everybody does it, then it creates more chaos. It's one person, it's easier to contain one person.
Right. You have a poli sci background?
Law.
Law background, okay. So I agree with you there. That I think the social is being worse there because at least put it this way, because if you have a kid who was raised by horrible parents, right, who was so derelict in their duties, and you may go trace back even further because they have been raised that way, and so on. But at least if the child was reared in such a household, at least there's opportunity for the person to get some better counseling outside of the household. In the church or in the school, neighbors down the street, or somewhere. But if the overall society, the overall culture is that way, then how does a person make adjustments in terms of like being challenged, to do better? So, and that's why the thing is that these ways can kind of grow, it can metastasize. It can be a small section of a society, and it can metastasize throughout the society, and in society then is afflicted by this thing we're leading up to is called, corruption. And again, it's that if we got to kind of watch out how we want to calibrate the use of the word corruption as well. But again, more on that starting tomorrow. So that's the moral of relativism. And another one will be, as some leaders might say, will be amoralism, where these are the ones that say, okay, look, we just have no moral, and have take pride in that. And they say it's for weak people. You have your morals. Because then it's like, this is not, to them, they think that it's not a fair fight. Like me, it's like when I'm debating with somebody, and facts mean nothing to them. They just make stuff up, and I'm thinking hard, trying to think of the facts. What about this study and this and that? Data, UN data or something, try to put an argument. They don't have to do that, they just make stuff up. So it's not a fair argument. Not a fair debate, I should say. Or let's say, for instance, that some people in a certain group, it's not a matter of like who got the most forceful and compelling argument. Instead, it's like who got the most bluster, right? Who's the most humorous in doing it. So it's not fair. So there's some people actually who see that who's not having any moral boundaries, they see this as having an advantage for the rest of us who have these boundaries. They're freer. And you realize there's something actually, to that one. So, and so it's sort of, sort of like outside of the moral community. And then also it's like the leaders might say that leaders actually will come to me, this whole thing, and some sort of science, I guess, about, how do you put it? About absolute power corrupts absolute. Right? In other words, so this idea that that you're in your position of power for so long. It's like I was a little bit late in getting here because the driver had to stop at all these lights, with the traffic, and all of that, right? But if you're a leader, if you have a state of something, you just get the motorcade and just keep going. There's no stop. And you do that all the time, every aspect of your life. You just come to realize that it's like, you know what, these rules they don't apply to me. That's for other people. And that's why people also then have a hard time keeping all that up. They have to subject themselves to, standing in line, standing in the queue, and all of that. So that's another reason as to why we get to this point where people can actually break rules easily. But we'll probably get thought out. In other words, is that again, if you don't have any moral boundaries, breaking the rules is the least of your worries. Yes.
All right. Go ahead. All right. And just always so I'm already. Somebody told me, I'm going to hear this money is not moral, tomorrow. So my question, as I said, it depends on the person, or the person that has the money. So my question is, can we say to the leader,
Neither is neither moral or amoral. Yeah, on the one hand, you might think it's context dependent, but the other also would depend more so on how we define these, because usually the definition of these two are designed, set up to be as polar opposites. In other words, it's exhaustive. There's nothing else, either one or the other. It's day or night. It's male or female, or etc. Sort of to be like binary conditions. And if that's the case, then the answer will be no. But if you don't want to define the two as that way, as being binary, then it leaves opportunities for something else, more like situation dependent. We're going to get into next. Yes.
Because you say, sorry, because if you say that most people I think are amoral, simply make decisions based on the situation.
But if they should make decisions based on the situation, then do you think that they have a moral code in making the decision than saying that they don't have a moral code in the first place? So that I struggle with it because if I make a decision baselessly or whatsoever, and it's like when you make a decision based on a situation, mean that you have preference in making a decision. So I have a problem with this, moralism also because to me they make a decision based on something.
Yeah, well, the thing that I saw was the relativism. It means that individuals do have a goal from different parts of the world, let's say, and they're just simply quite different. In their specific social cocoons, what they make decisions around right and wrong and the proper treatment of others that's what they know and what they ascribe, importance to. You know, when you get outside of that, the same thing is true for the other, for the other group. They're all following a moral script in terms of how to perceive and judge, right and wrong, and within themselves. But just as those who are amoral, again, there is no moral. Now that's kind of an extreme thing you say, is no. It is kind of extreme. That's like saying, I have no problem lighting a baby on fire and throwing it out of the police goes down. That's kind of old, right? But, so you might have some individuals like that, but that's saying that individuals who have very minuscule anyway, moral code by which they live. And they see it again, a lot of them see it as being advantageous to them. Some of us, who just have a problem with, jumping the queue. I mean, nobody's gonna shoot you, just say, go just jump the queue. You gotta lose your job and shot and anything like that. But it's just that something internally just says, this is wrong. I just can't do it. I can't do this. I'm standing here. I just can't move. Stop. So there's something there that's powerful. And again, but it's gonna vary. That's in you, and that's somewhat of a particular culture, but in some other cultures, like when I go to my side of my international, like in my international, it's like they don't have, they just don't respect people whatsoever. So there I was, when I didn't know, I just had to go on a flight to get to Barbados for a conference, and these people just going everywhere, and I'm just follow the line until I realized that, oh, this is the code here, okay, and just do the same thing. So that's it is. Oh, man. Yeah.
I see morality to be very subjective, depending on the area you're coming from. But there is a bit of relatedness or similarities. For example, disrespect. It would be seen in a particular setting, to be seen in a very particular way. Whereas if you go to another place, it's seen in another way. So it depends on where you find yourself. So you can't really justify whether something is moral or immoral universally. It depends on where you're coming from. So as a leader, depending on the moral setting he was and the codes he was given, through social orientation and personal orientation, that's what they used to lead. So we don't have a specific objective rules for moral as it is for ethics. That's what I think.
Yeah. I think it's coming back to like I was responding to this gentleman's remarks as well. That in other words, that in society, community, I think the whole society or the community A or community B, they're very different. They can even think about it. Geographically, quite dispersed. And with each of them having there's sort of a moral goal within the community. But even within those communities, very different A and B, you still find individuals who will be sort of moral. In other words, if you might have you take my B and plot her down over in A, and she still has, B goals. And she has, if I had moved here to Ghana from the US, okay, so I consider myself sort of a cosmopolitan. I can live almost anywhere, so to speak. And I see value in those societies throughout the world. Like Montreal, Vermont, Val, But still, though, despite all that coming on, there's some things I would have to, that wouldn't work in Ghana, that work in the United States. So that's one thing, you take the in and send her or him to the United States, so the adjustment there. I see all the time with my students that come from Africa, I get a new cohort every year. I see the struggle and the transformation that they have to go through. And it's not always the same way. It's different how they go about it, trying to please them. But at the same time, if some individuals supposed to be immoral. Not a matter of coming from another place. They just simply don't have it in balance. And I don't know if so do you think that that's possible? You think that you can have individuals who just don't have moral boundaries? Yeah. I'm not even saying that you don't believe that. I know I met quite a few people who are that way. Primarily back in the United States. You can look at me with disbelief, like I cannot believe you're not calling on me. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add my voice to the person.
Yeah.
As an individual, I believe, I'm Jonathan Ross from Liberia. I believe strongly in moral, cultural, and ethical relativism. Like you said, it's subjective. Take for instance, like I share with other people, to be hungry is biological determined. But what we eat is culturally determined. Take for instance, in Liberia, we grow cassava, we grow corn. But there are two reasons why we grow corn in Liberia. We either roast it to chew it, or we boil it to eat it. But based on the culture of our Ghanaians and enjoy their food, they have so many food developed on corn that we don't develop. On our corn we grow. So I strongly believe in the issue of cultural or moral relativity. And it was provided by some philosophy in the past. Like if you take, for instance, the situations of Thomas Alberti in the foundation of government and John Locke, James Jarvis, they all have different views on what government should be like. The James Jarvis who came from a monarchy government, he asked that government should be over monarchy. And then we come to Montesquieu, the man who provided the spirit of law. He clearly stated that government everywhere is varies from country to country, region to region, culture to culture. And then I believe for the little amount of years I have lived for, in Africa, as an African, I believe our definition, like the one provided that person did all blurred in the how about leadership about disruption. I think for Africa, our definition for leadership should be about growth. Take for instance, we have some visionary leader, the Kwame Nkrumah. He gave the power, he had the vision of pan-Africanism. It had a very strong momentum at the time. But the definition of disruption took place. And we see what happened to the game today. We have a very slow momentum. And we look at the issues of, even in Liberia, we have a very good leader. When Arab he had a vision and he was pushing his vision. But the definition of leadership disruption took place, and we are backward today. Take for instance Libya. They had a good leader, and Gaddafi had a vision as well as coming to grow Africa. But disruption took place, see what Libya is today. So I believe based on the issues of relativity, based on my grounds of values I have in the school of relativity, I believe leadership for Africa should be good, not disruption.
Yeah, so the thing is, taking back to the disruption and management and all that. But yeah, so the thing is that you're talking about really having, as I'll say, really having both. The two really, go together. And just knowing the skill sets. So the thing I was going to say here next is the thing around egoism. So people can just simply have a big ego, and usually people who are going to be leaders or be, heads of state, for instance, they often have big egos. You don't get to be a head of state by just being a nice, sweet guy. It's like you got to imagine yourself as being more important than other people. Other people might not voice it in such a way. You got this industrial size strength of self-confidence and think that you have some special abilities, special innate abilities that might be divinely inspired that other people just simply don't have, and therefore you got this obligation then to be this thing. So it's like the ego. Ego is it will be enormously large and very powerful as well. And so you want to break the rules, you break the rules because you can. You know, and that's all there is to it. And again, there's a certain amount of satisfaction that will come from really breaking the rules. There's nobody in there who's not breaking a rule, honestly, right? You can't get around that. And so when I've broken a rule before, I break rules professionally. But again, it's like what I'm trying to get to this thing around something. As long as it's not for me, again, talking about it being relative, and I appreciate that word. That's why I want to bring that into the mix here. Is that as long as it's not business, but if I can convince myself that this is something for a larger good, and it might not be personally what I want to do. I like to spend my time another way, but it's going to be a larger for a larger good. Then I'll break the rules. Well, breaking the rule for personal, benefits is something totally different. So when when it was mentioned at the outset around asking what the definition of corruption, get this thing, kind of standard definition, and abusing the trust and office, et cetera, of course, that. That's the sort of the standard one. But as long as it's not that, then the breaking rules can be desirable. And again, but it's nothing. It isn't in fact relative, and it's worth trying to think about it critically and reflect on it inwardly. So the moral situationalism, the thing is that people say, okay, look, I do have a moral code, but it's like a chameleon. It's going to change based on the situation that I'm in. Like one guy was said to me that, essentially this thing around that, he feels no moral obligation to tell the truth. So when you hear that though, you just basically don't want to believe anything he says. You don't know who he is. But so again, in other words, you might say, okay, look, there's sometimes I'll tell the truth. If it's convenient, it's not going to cost me anything, fine, I'll tell the truth. That makes me happy, I'll tell the truth. Right? But if it's not convenient for me not to tell the truth, I just won't tell the truth. So there are a lot of people who are that way as well in terms of having a moral situation. It's moral situationalism that sort of like defines how they make these decisions around rule breaking. That's really quite key. Yes, and the gray shirt in the back. Yes.
I think I believe with what the lady there said. Morality, immorality, depends on the context you find yourself, the religion, the geographical area you find yourself. Because in general, corruption is an immoral behavior. But some places it is really celebrated. Like for example, one of the novels written by Professor Chino Achebe in the book he quotes that he was that the people that celebrate their corrupt leaders and they say that don't pull them, let them eat because tomorrow it might be your turn. So you can see that in some places they celebrate people, corrupt leaders, and all this. So it depends on the context.
Yeah, so the answer to the guy in front of them. Yeah, so before you start talking, let me just say that so the thing around the context dependent and the the moral situationalism has some value. Some people say like, you might say that okay, in other words, you can make a difference between um, you might say, okay, you know what, and I see that it's actually working. I don't agree with it. I wish that wasn't the case. But you do find individuals being bound by, situational codes, which code to apply. It's almost like people say they work at a public institution and they say, try to answer their books. And they say, well, who's asking? I know which book to show you. Instead of just a pen. Depending on what the situation is. So that's something that's very, very, very important. Because absolutism tends not to be quite viable, in with humans in the collective. Yes, sir.
Yeah. When you say your friend says no moral obligation to tell truth, you know, I was like shocked the first time I heard that in administration lie is necessary to lie. It's not a necessary administration. Now we are talking about moral and immoral. I think it depends on the context in which you find yourself. Back home in Liberia, we had a situation. We had legal, we had law, moral, and immorality at play. There was a murder. This child lived with a permanent citizen. Sorry, I wouldn't mention the name for security reasons. And and the child was murdered. But the murder was kind of made up. The popular outcry. There were activists, civil society people. The kids went to court. The Supreme Court was joining the case. When the public was seeing it moral that these people be sent to prison because there was a murder that been committed. So for our society, murder is somehow immoral. Now, when the case went to court, these people were found guilty as per the public expectation. But President Sirleaf couldn't have signed the verdict of the judges that certain persons should be killed by hanging, which is highly immoral for our society. But then, according to international protocol, I think the Geneva Convention, that when such things happen, people should be killed. Now, at one point in time, before one of our presidents, Dr. Toro, before his death, he was to sign a death warrant of his brother for corruption. So when we talk about moral and immorality, I think it comes in the context from which we see it. And you talk about rule breaking. If you're a president or a governor, say for a particular state in the US, do you really see yourself staying alive? Certainly no. Because society grants you certain privileges. So how do we blame the privilege that the leader carries without immorality?
Yeah, so quite well said there. And that's how, like in this next slide, when I was giving you sort of a different perspective, I'm saying that basically, we as, we citizens, basically give consent, to this leaders to do rule breaking, and then, they basically are doing it in our name, and the leader can then interpret it as that, okay, well, this is what you want. You have me representing you. And therefore, as I make these decisions, it's to benefit you, and that's why you have me in position to do the things that you can't do for you. So that is what you're getting at. So, but then this last piece here is this idea about cosmopolitanism. Where the thing is that, one might say, like, I gave it you earlier, like I said about me, kind of like part of the goal of the script that I follow, is that trying to do the most good for the most people. And there are some individuals who are going to get us down. Like, for instance, with me, is that, in my office, I believe in giving everybody a fair chance and trying to give you the tools and resources to be successful. And have you see that you get due process. But if you don't perform, I got no problem whatsoever in canning, sacrifice. I say it now, it's sacrifice. We don't say sacrifice, but I have no problem doing that. In fact, I'll drive down the street myself to get rid of you as soon as possible. And so, but again, that's this idea around, with the greater good. In other words, this institution is being held back. The organization is being held back because of your poor performance. And we need somebody that's going to be occupied the position is going to perform much more effectively, and more people can actually benefit from the organization's mission. That's, again, going after the greatest good is the thing. But there are some individuals who might say, okay, look, already people said earlier, started in a quarter of a century or so. This idea around saying, okay, that, my people are more important. Well, what my people might be. What it might be Canadian, might be, I don't know, Igbo, or might be American, whatever they might be. Say, look, our people are more important. And therefore, they should be first in the most. In the greatest variety. Best quality. Um, and there's one one say, okay, look, is there a problem with that? In other words, you got some allegiance. Allegiance is a good thing, I guess. In other words, so should allegiance say that that our people are special, and we should make decisions that enhance them at the expense of others? Is there anybody who thinks that should be the case? Okay. So we got a lot of cosmopolitans here. But there are some people, I can assure you, there are some people who actually, like back at home in the U.S., that's how they're sort of ethically challenged in that way. They will see it as though, like they'll say things like become like the U.S. foreign aid, like USAID, that contributes to some of these activities. They are just, as we say, pissed off to no end. Because it seems like, look, we got problems in the United States. You got people who are hungry, people can't go to school, etc. You send the money over to Africa, these kinds of things. Our people should come first. You do that over and over and over again. So that's why it's good that you, unlike those people who don't think that way, saying that, look, our people should be first and get the best and get the votes. So that's rare. So we got common policies here. I've already gone through some of this here, but let me just keep going. Last thing I mentioned was about the Machiavellian. It's kind of like, the immoral that we talked about. Who sees being the person with Machiavellian considers himself to be more advantage when you're dealing with somebody who are bound by these codes. And the Machiavellian could be the fox, the fox and the lion, right? Right. So it's like trying to have fun to you, that doesn't work, and just simply devour you, And so there are a lot of leaders that we know, I like to say people who need leadership positions. But there are leaders nonetheless, even if they are sort of villainous and wasting resources and wasting time, going full side is bad. They're still leaders because they can't follow. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that around responsibility. The last one I want to just mention was this idea about climate change, because we made some changes in the program. I was going to spend some bit of time on this. This is one of the areas that I spent a lot of time thinking about and studying. And I suspect, I could be totally wrong, you can correct me. That'd be good. I suspect that this doesn't come up a whole lot, in Africa. In terms of like climate change, it doesn't. Not so much where it does or doesn't. It doesn't. Okay, yeah. And just like also like in the U.S., certainly like among African Americans, environmentalism is not something that's very common. Now, despite the fact that people of African descent, whether it's here in the continent or in the diaspora, in many ways suffer more so than other people from environmental degradation and climate change. But yet those are the very people who are focused less on that. How could that be? Why is that?
I think that we generally have other pressing problems to think about climate change. When you have people starving and yeah, they can't using themselves. So that has become something we
into the future. But I think it's something we should begin to think about.
Yes.
And I like the part where you brought it in climate change. And you said the people that benefit that are talking about it. Maybe because the fight has become more of like political than now it's actuality. And I have reasons for saying it. We're attending a gathering in Togo on this issue of climate change. And we were negotiating. What I understood was at the end is a give and take. Greenhouse powers, industrial powers, are not willing to cut down greenhouse gas emissions. But yesterday, President Africa do not cut down timber when Africa is not economically developed if she doesn't sell some timber. So I think this issue of climate change, greater share of the responsibility lies on the industrial nation. It's the understanding that the ozone layer is burst. And where does it burst from? From your America, California. It's my understanding that fire cut in the forest. How do it cut? Because greenhouse gas emission is high. Okay, it's a one thing. America should buy for billions of dollars towards the fire. But what are you doing except pumping the money? Are you cutting down your emission? But rather telling China to not be the biggest economy in the world, she cut down their production. Telling Africa, don't cut their timber. If we don't cut our timber and sell it, how do you expect us to grow our economy? So I think it's more of like political than that of actuality.
Oh, wow, Steve. Okay. Some of that, so I guess what I'm hearing that what you're saying is that climate change is made up. It's not a real thing.
It's real.
Okay.
Why? It's not real. It's politics.
You said, okay, we
It's
said,
fight for protection. It's not real.
okay, we said not real. It is happening. So, anyway, let's say it's right here.
Climate change is real.
Right.
Climate change is real.
Right.
The sun shines today than it shone yesterday. The rain falls today than it fell yesterday. There are a lot of floods than it was yesterday, which is evident that climate change is a reality. But the fight hasn't been a reality, it's still politics. That's my point.
Okay, let's say this then also that, politics is everywhere, as we know. It's in everything. So say that it's politics, that's not something so profound because politics is everything, you know? So even me deciding this morning I'm going to do something in terms of how I would get here and what service I would use, it was a political decision. But really, in terms of if I knew the details of what I had to think about, you would understand what I'm saying. So it's just everywhere. But my point, the bigger point is this though. The thing around is that, so I'm glad to know, I was being frightened for a moment. I thought you were saying that climate change, they are what we call climate change deniers. And what I tend to do is that, it's like when you have a climate change denier, I tend not to even want to even have a discussion. You know, if like somebody's going to say like the earth is flat, I said, don't really want to waste my time negotiating with this, debating this. It's really worth it for me. I'd rather say, okay, you're right. Well, if you want to think that's cool, I got other things to do. But so I'm glad to know that's not what you're saying. That climate change is something that's made up. But if you want to say then, okay, that America and industrialized nations in general are not being honest and coming through and doing their part, then okay, fine. That's something totally different. And but it's not, you can't say as well that the emissions are not being reduced. They really are now. Are they being reduced fast enough? I think it's reduced fast enough, probably not enough to our liking, but there is a transformation occurring. Like I had a discussion also last night where we were also talking about China. And China has this environment that's really grotesque. You know, we see in India, we talk about fast growth, India and China and what they're going to do, these different leaders. But they're slowly coming to the realization, China more so than India at this point in time, that as much as they would like to, from a biophysical point of view of the planet, they are not going to be allowed to do what the United States did. They're just simply industrial growth, giving was abusing the environment within humans. dumping trash into the rivers, the oceans, letting it all into the air. The United States did that, for well over a century. China's not going to do that. Just simply because of the limitations. Okay, they would like to do it, it's cheaper that way. Versus having to actually be limited, and have to spend more money on research, development, get new technology, so it's expensive, to limit the capture, the emissions, and whatever else, and now non-toxic, et cetera. It's expensive, and it's time consuming, and it's delayed. But they're realizing we need to understand the finish line, and deal with that their environment. They're realizing that they have to change. So that's on the other side, and it's also occurring in the U.S. and certainly in the Obama administration. They have changed other dramatically in terms of, he's actually the administration. I'm not here as a pitch for the Obama administration, but I'll just give you a flavor for it. In other words, it's actually on a course now for the coal-fired power facilities are basically on their way out. You can't get financing in the United States for them. You can't get insurance for them anymore. In order to get new licenses, you have to meet some extraordinarily high technical specifications in order to get a new license. This on a course to death. It's a death warrant that he set it on. Now there are a lot of people in there who, because of politics, who try to fight against that, for sure. So we talk about there's a lot of money to be made. All of a sudden, there are billionaires who have their source of their billions about to be truncated. You think they're not going to fight? They're going to have every politician possible to try to address that. They want to delay it as much as possible. So yes, it's political, and yes, industrialization needs to be doing more. The thing is, the thing is, like, how do we actually, A, how do we push them more? And B, how do we have leaders here in the government, leaders and managers, therefore do how do we have it such that they also then say, despite almost like irrespective of the source of the climate change, is here as impact here. And that's what's happening in the horn with those droughts. It isn't all of a sudden because God says drought. This is climate change. You don't have to. And so, in terms of the drought, like floods can kill hundreds of dollars. Drought, they kill thousands, they can kill millions. They're going to occur more frequently and more intensely and for a longer duration. On the continent, growing seasons are going to shrink, and the fertility and productivity will actually decline, as well. But again, it's being caused by climate change from somewhere else. So at some point, you do say, well, okay, look, we know it's caused somewhere else, and they should be doing more, but what are we going to do right here is affecting us now? Look, if we, you don't know me, I don't know you, but all of a sudden, if this room starts getting attacked by other people, we become very good friends all of a sudden. You got a common threat somewhere to be working against. And you would think that at some point in time, that starts to resonate with Africans as well. And so when leaders are not pursuing this, you might think that is sort of a form of corruption. But that corruption could be sort of driven out of ignorance too, to some extent. Because the thing that I point out is, as well is that it's not just dealing with the negative, it's also pursuing the positive. In other words, the point being that what I call this, this destructive industrial. So we here's the word industrialization. That's only for the industrialization that we've known today, which is the destructive form. The destructive form of industrialization means that's going to scoop stuff out of the earth, using fossil fuels, then to burn that stuff and change its morphology and change it in some form of fashion for some final product or some service, and then dumping the waste of it into the atmosphere, or on the earth, or in some ocean, or somewhere. That's a destructive form of industrialization. The more we produce, the more degradation we cause for the planet. But that's not all of industrialization. Industrialization can, in fact, be ecological. But what I want to say is equal industrialization. Whereas the industrialization is sort of mimics nature. Because, we, nature doesn't have no risk. The output from every species, like input for another species. And it goes and goes, 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 goes. Input for another, death input for another, so on and so forth, and this circuit. There is no waste and nature problems. But when you come in with our form of industrialization, we've introduced all this waste. And actually, we would actually do reconceptualize, reimagine industrialization that mimics nature. That's something that could actually very well be coming in the future, but that's an area that's ripe for Africans somewhere, some country to take advantage of that. In other words, the idea about, I give you kind of like a parallel example. Let's say that back in the 1960s, just sort of random about, because back in the 1960s, that early 1960s, that Ghana and two guys put there, Ghana and South Korea. In terms of Ghana had, I think, was war railroad lines and war infrastructure. That's South Korea, right? And then there's a lot of things worked out kind of different. But home riders, political also, for sure. International global politics and all the rest. We know that. That whole story. But the thing is that but back then nobody would have predicted that South Korea not only would be able to surpass them in that respect, but also become a global player in terms of one of the world's largest steel producers, largest ship tanker producer, automotive producer, consumer electronics. Nobody would have predicted that. So in a simple way, what I was saying to people is that in 2015, nobody will believe you to say, nobody. A lot of people, certainly back in the United States, in other places too, would believe you to say, okay, by 2035, that several African nations could be global leaders in some agro-industrial technology sphere. A lot of people just couldn't imagine that, but it's right there in the open. The idea about, we know the story about Kenya, what's happening there in terms of their visa and the mobile banking and the, telecom.
M-Pesa.
M-Pesa. M-Pesa, right. But okay, thank you for the question. I'm closer to Kenya now than what I was back in the States. But I guess the real point though is that the idea though about despite that progress, that they're going to actually overcome South Koreans in that particular sphere when they got such a long start. That may not happen. But on the ecological side, the needs are very there's a narrow gap between Kenya and some other, in terms of biofuels, solar, some other ones that's narrower. It's easier for African nations to overcome that gap more so than in some of these other very mature, established industries. Yes. The Roman mic has disappeared, so go for it.
Okay, thank you with the reference to South Korea. I just want to buttress some points with regards to corruption and climate change in Africa. And I would agree with him quite right what he said that there's so much politics around climate change, advocacy and fight against climate change. But then I think one thing we also should understand as young Africans is that we should, in our own little way, also try to reflect backwards inwards. A lot of times we look too forward. Sometimes we don't really understand what's happening around us. And I'll just give you a typical example. Now, I want to talk about climate change. One of the biggest issues with climate change in Africa is deforestation. And now, the question we should ask ourselves is, deforestation is not caused by the greenhouse emission in the West, either in China or in the US or anything. It's actually caused by the local people. You understand? And it's caused by local people because they need this wood to probably feed their family. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes we need to just take a step back and look at what's happening around us really. So we are losing a lot of forests because the local people need to feed, they need to eat, and corruption is not allowing development to enter into these rural communities. So like one of the things that I think the last administration in Nigeria tried to do was to create a system whereby most of these rural communities can be able to cook their food without using wood and all that. But then it wasn't sustained because of corruption. So what I'm trying to explain is, I think for me, corruption and climate change go hand in hand in Africa, and particularly Nigeria. Because even if you look at the Niger Delta region of the country, you see a lot of environmental degradation in these places, and nobody is doing anything about it. There's so much emission that is going on, and even the government is not admitting to how far we are going. So when you say, okay, the West and all that are emitting, yes, I agree with you. But there's so much emission that is even going on in Africa that nobody is accounting for. So that's why sometimes, because the reason why you can talk about the West is because they have been accountable to what is happening around them. You can easily look at the figures and say, but in Africa, there are a whole lot of things that is happening, even particularly like in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, that is never been accounted for. And so I believe that there's so much emission also going out from Africa, which by virtue of corruption, they are not acknowledging one. Then two, deforestation is a big deal, which I think we also have to look into and try to find solutions. And lastly, I want to talk about technology because I believe that one of the reasons why I don't do too much of climate change advocacy is because it always ends in technology at the end of the day. So, but then, if Africa has serious issues with infrastructure in the first place, so how do we mitigate climate change technology, even if we can't meet our own basic needs in terms of infrastructure? So that's why I think Africa is really having this issue when it comes to corruption and climate change. So I feel for me is that I think we just have, young Africans have to look inward. Let's see local solutions we can use to explore. I mean, local solutions we can explore in this time to probably bring changes to our community, not just the solutions that we have presently. And I believe that if we get some of these local solutions to work, just like what we have in Kenya about the mobile payments, if we can have some of these local systems to work in place, I believe there's something we can also export even to Asian countries and probably develop from there. Thank you.
Okay. So the thing is that we're saying here that the time is short. I want to try to get in more items. So that was one. I was going to ask a question about how can you give us an indication as to how corruption is contributing to or failing to address climate change in your country. So I have an example.
Thank you very much. I would agree with my brother here from Liberia. He was talking about deforestation, and I will go about the farming system in the world. In 2013, the UN came out with a report on the way forward for agriculture in the world, and the report was titled "Wake Up Before It Is Too Late." And in this report, they were saying that they realized that industrial agriculture is not the way forward, it's not what will save the world. And they did analysis that actually 70% of the world population is being fed by small scale farmers. Industrial agriculture only goes into animal feed and fiber fuel. And they're saying that a lot of people go to bed without food, not because there's no food in the world currently. There are abundance of food. But when industrial farmers do produce the food, they only take food to or sell food to where there's huge profit. When small scale farmers produce, everybody is filled. And then bringing it back, it's like the big nations who are promoting industrial agriculture are not willing to calm down to this realization that industrial agriculture is not going to save the world. And at the same time, industrial agriculture takes a whole lot of big land, grow just one crop, and this contributes to new pests, getting resistant to all the chemicals and all that. So when it comes that the West or the industrial nations are not willing to give up some of the profit that they're making through some of the things that they're producing. So the West
at the same time has a lot of obligation. They have to do their part. Realizing that right now, business cannot sustain the world, but they keep on preaching that that's the way to go, and it is destroying our lands. Now, when you come to Ghana, when you go to the villages, there are some things that we used to have as food. Now you don't have them because of chemicals. And all these things are coming from the big industries like down in Central and the West.
Thank you very much. Okay, my situation in Ghana has to do with carbon. So I joined a coalition whereby we deal with carbon emissions. This is what happened. When the government was trying to solve the problem of electricity, he thought of the best way out to be carbon. And for us as the youth, we realized the situation and we wanted to bring out the effect it's going to have on the people rather than the solution it's going to create. And so when we tried it, interestingly, EPA was backing the government. And that, because of this, we started a movement by Ban Ki-moon in September, which was about showing our leaders the way to climate change. So we decided that we would rather go to the village that are going to have this carbon being in their village and get them to understand the concept and the impact, how this is going to affect them in the future and what it's going to do so that together we can talk about the issue. And interestingly, the government has changed the location after we did the first advocacy in that village. Now, we had to go to Bangkok for another training concerning Chinese overseas investment because the Chinese youth are now realizing that their investment is not really making a positive change. So, with Friends of the Earth US, they try to get the youth to begin to start investigating. So we had youth from Bangkok and other people trying to talk about the situation. And interestingly, the money is really given for a particular project. And before the money leaves, let's say China, somebody has a cut on it. It gets to the government and the government has a cut on it. So before this thing has to get to the down part, you realize that it doesn't make any change. Now, my issue relating this to corruption is that now the government sees that he has a short time. So he wants to make an impact before he leaves for political reasons. So that is what causes that they don't really look into the matter of climate change. And as a youth, if you try to advocate or do something, they send us an email. Now whatever we do, they will still bring it up. So I think it's about time. One of the key things I learned from the Chinese was that it's about time we invade embassies, trying to caution them on what they are doing about our situation. Because this thing is destroying South Africa. We have videos of all these things, but still the government is willing to bring it back to Ghana. So it's about the youth trying to make more advocacies. So just as I have been able to do something with my team, if another person also does it in another community, then they see the broader perspective of the whole thing and then try to make that change because they see we are looking beyond what they are doing and seeing the effect it's going to cause in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How does it climate change corruption in Ghana? I'm a Ghanaian actually. And I like to take it from a personal perspective. I lost a friend on the 10th of June, a good friend. I was cycle club here in Accra, over 155 foot died, he lost his life. He's living out for just reading. He was young and he was very totally. And so I kept asking myself, what is the issue? So currently what I was with, we live by CSIR, that is Center for Industrial Scientific Research, showed that the main reason for the flooding was because of the drainage systems were chilled with mostly waste. And I realized that this problem is cyclical in Accra, basically every period of May, June, July, there's always flood, and more flood high every year. So I then to find out what is it that the government is just reactive or they are proactive to solve this problem. So I found out in the previous years, for instance in 2013 there was a little flood, in 50 of this 14 of the flat, 40 weekly live are taking place in a few nights and crap. But rather they are giving contracts to people to clear out these drainage systems and allow the drainage systems. And yes, so the projects were started, but they were not completed or they were not even done well. So these are some of the corruption in terms of, and it's a result of climate change. So what am I doing? So since I lost my friend on the 3rd of June, I was so frustrated. And I was asking myself, what do I do? I'm a tech guy. So what I do is app, which is called Polymer. Kolima is a Ghanaian name for collectors. They come to your house, they're Muslim friends, they come to your house, knock on your door, take out your bottles, they pay you for your bottles. So it's an Android app. We use a better version in August. We did a test version. So you download the app and then it's easy how to separate your waste in terms of plastic waste and industrial waste and degradable waste. And then you send a request that I even come to your doorstep and pick up your waste. And then they send you a ticket over your same application. And then with time, once we sell those waste to recycle companies, we send you your money. So we pay you 50% of what we earn from the recycle companies. So those can even separate the waste. You send a request, we come and collect up your waste for you, and then we don't pay you. But once you're able to separate it, instead of you paying waste companies to come to you, so we see people learning how to keep their plastic waste containers, which we believe it's a cause of climate change and we're making impact. So in November 31st, we're going to release the second test of the digital version that you can download it from the App Store. And I'm glad that we just put $10,000 just from Saturday to Cohort. Thank you very much.
Here in the corner. This is a good question. So what, how are we doing time? What is the?
We almost at coffee break time. On the right hand side,
There's a couple more than we'll wrap it up.
Okay, I must say, like an aspirin. Because the reason is because I'm very much interested in climate change. When you talk about climate change, I believe there are lots of corruption going to it because we know the solution. The solution. The first one is government policy. Government has to bring a policy that will help reduce the effects of greenhouse gases. Now, when we talk about climate change, there is a need to awake people on the use of renewable energy. We don't have to be dependent on fossil fuel because when there is awareness on renewable energy, it's going to cut deforestation in the north, it's going to reduce the dependency on fossil fuel in some of those countries. And for example, now, when we talk about renewable energy, we talk about in terms of sustainability. Whether you like it or not, petroleum is going to finish one day. It's going to finish one day. So what are you going to use? When you talk about renewable energy, we talk about safety. Some of the things we use in cooking, like LPG, some people are scared of using it because it has killed a lot of lives. It has burned a lot of property. When we talk about renewable energy, we talk about cleanliness. Imagine our mothers cooking with firewood and charcoal. Look at the ceiling carbon deficit. Imagine what they do. The carbon is what causes high mortality rates, is what causes carcinogenic diseases. When we talk about renewable energy, I think is where every country is supposed to be focusing on. But I don't know one thing about Africa, we're just always going backwards and we are not like complicating like other part of it. But I must say among the reasons that is causing this is corruption. That is among the reasons. Thank you very much.
The third reason. No one has other voices and also, but third reason.
All right, no problem. You want to know what's our own initiative in this fight, like well, in Liberia, we organized a group called Tongues of Liberia to deal with climate change. But it's almost frustrating that nobody hears the cry when you're crying on climate change. Because when I try to blend my a professional background down to climate change, I see a lot of things. As an economist, I see the economic implications. I see not the willingness of a society to sacrifice in this fight. We organized the first conference on climate change in Liberia. UNDP was so instrumental, they granted us their facility, they granted us their expertise. We went through it. We wrote a major proposal on the management of waste and preservation of wetlands. It was almost frustrating for UNDP to tell us go to the EPA. And since UNDP gave us that mandate, we then go to the EPA till here today. Because people have understood that this is a new thing that's emerging in the world, and they are allowed millions of dollars being, pumped towards it. So when the millions come, because there are so competing priorities the national government is looking at, and not too many persons is knowledgeable about climate change, they use the opportunity and divert this money either to their personal gains or to different things. So for me, the fight is almost frustrating, but we are not giving up, we are into it, and we hope that Liberia can be of help. Like the Norwegian government is now partnered with our forestry development authority to preserve land, to preserve forests, do no deforestation, to preserve the tree and reforestation those ones that have been deforested.
Yeah, so gentlemen, just pick two more of you.
Thank you very much. My name is Patterson Rubin. When we look at the topic itself, corruption and climate change, I don't want to be 100% agree with my brother there that Africa we are making change in terms of climate change. For me, I always say in Africa, let no one mystify us, deceive us when we talk of climate change. Because according to the International Panel of Climate Change, just quite recently, according to the investigation, there is a statistic that informs us that in quite recently, the 20th century up to the 21st century that we're living now, if we don't try to address climate change, we're going to have a lot of destruction in Africa. So if that is so, for me, I think when we blend together climate and corruption, I always figure it out, we look at transparency and accountability. And that is where I agree with my colleague that we're talking of the policy in Africa. I think this is one of the problems that is disturbing us in Africa. The type of policy our people, the government are embarking on is disturbing us when we talk of climate. And it's only if we address transparency and accountability, then we can also address climate change. Because when you look at the greenhouse gases, this is also another very big problem for us in Africa. Because for me, I believe it's a very big source that is disturbing the climate change in Africa. So if we are not having the policies that are ready for us to make the climate change in Africa, it's going to be disturbing for us.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark David from Nigeria. So the question is, how does climate change corruption occur in your country? There's something called environmental impact assessment. There's pre-EIA and there's post-EIA. Pre is the impact assessment you carry out in a specific area or a community before you start up a project, say a refinery or something that will occupy a very large expanse of land. And post-impact assessment is the assessment you carry out after the refinery or whatever you want to use the large expanse of land has been done. Okay, so my project, because I studied environmental botany, was on pollution. And specifically in Nigeria, Niger Delta, there's Ogoni land that has been polluted. Post-EIA was carried out, and the effect of pollution was written and given to the government. So this is how it relates to corruption and government officials. They know exactly what to do. The result was to plant a certain kind of, or a species of plant in the area, because Niger Delta is mangrove swamp, and mangrove swamp is specific to some kinds of plants. There are plants that absorb hydrocarbons. There are plants that absorb pollutants, and there are lower vascular plants. What you need is to have those kind of plants in the specific environment. And since mangrove swamp is not very far away from the water, when there's pollution and when there's rainfall, it usually washes away the topsoil and then it grows back. And you need it to become, and I don't mean it's just a token, but you don't do it. Another thing is when there's the impact assessment, people lobby. You don't give the right channel, and then because before you get it, it takes a very, very long time for you to start project in the first place.
Yeah, so, I just want to wrap up for this next section.
Just
But
one last one.
But the thing is though is that, so it's good to know that there's some people will really tune in to the environmental matter and climate change. I was thinking it might be my name as a judge here, but again, there's a lot of interest in it, and again, found, need for it. 60% of the, African, landfills is in agriculture. I should say, yeah, the agriculture, and 40% of the economy is there. And so, of course, agriculture is so very much so impacted by climate change. Not to mention, other factors, that, sort of demand for attention and, again, corruption. I suspect there's underlying components in the area here, I can definitely underline a lot in that space as well. So, okay, we have to go, but he is determined to get his question in, because he's so brief, it's unbelievable.
Actually, there's not a question that I want to ask. I just want to put the discussion in my question. I believe that yes, there's a lot of challenges in Africa. I believe that yes, we need to have the issue of climate change. And climate change is predominant in some southern areas. Last month, Obama was in Alaska, and he talked so much about, in fact, he didn't just talk about it, he saw it, happening, and he had to give some aids to bring back the people in the lower region to come up, because of what's going on there. I believe that Africa has made some impact in terms of protecting the issue of climate change. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa last, I think it was 2010 or 11, set up an initiative, the African Policy Center in Addis Ababa, and this particular group of people always meet every year, where they invite biologists, scientists, or practitioners and other professionals, and they come up with policies, reaching out to other African leaders and educate them on the issue of climate change. And most of them are really looking into the issue. So, because of too many challenges in Africa, it may seem like they're not working, but they are really working to see that this issue of climate change is handled by Africa, and they are doing really good about it. And we actually come up with some other areas. It may not be so focused where the likes of America they are handling it because of the center issue and African hype. But one thing is certain that they are actually working to suppress the issue of climate change. We have seen it in the area of flood, we have seen it in the area of erosion and whatnot. So let's give Africa the credit that is down when they are doing some activities in the right direction, but when they are not, we also talk about it. Thank you very much.